The laughter hit Blessing before she even reached the counter. It started soft, like whispers behind silk curtains, then grew sharper, cutting through the perfumed air of the boutique like broken glass. Every head turned. Every eye judged. Her faded brown dress hung loose on her thin frame. Her shoes, once black, now showed more dust than polish. Her hands trembled as she clutched her worn purse tighter. She didn't belong here. And everyone made sure she knew it. Hello family, welcome back. Please take a moment to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. It truly means a lot to us. Don't forget to share it with your friends and loved ones and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. So sit back and relax as we dive into the story. Blessing had walked past this store in Victoria Island 100 times. Each time, she would pause at the glass windows, staring at the beautiful gowns that seemed to glow under the golden lights. Today she had finally gathered enough courage to step inside. She wasn't here to buy anything. She knew she couldn't afford even a button from this place. But she just wanted to see beauty up close. Maybe imagine herself wearing something elegant, even if only for a moment. The boutique sparkled like a dream. Silk fabrics flowed like water over the mannequins. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting soft light on everything. Well-dressed women laughed softly as they tried on gowns that cost more than Blessing's yearly rent. "Excuse me?" A saleswoman's sharp voice cut through her wonder. "These gowns are very expensive. Perhaps you're in the wrong place." A few women giggled behind their hands. Then a tall, elegant woman turned from the mirror. Her name was Monica, and her lips curved into a cruel smile. "You call that a dress?" Monica said, her voice dripping with mockery. "She looks like she stitched it from old curtains." More laughter erupted around the room. Blessing's cheeks burned hot with shame. But she didn't speak. She lowered her eyes, holding her purse even tighter. Her mother's words echoed in her mind, "Walk tall even when they look down on you." "I was just admiring the gowns," Blessing whispered. Monica tilted her head, pretending to be sympathetic. "How sweet. Maybe one day when you marry a rich man you can borrow one." The other women laughed again, louder this time. Blessing felt her heart breaking into pieces. "I will go now," she said quietly. As she turned toward the door, the laughter followed her like a shadow. But just as she reached for the handle, another voice spoke. "That's enough." The voice was calm, low, and commanding. Everyone stopped laughing. They all turned to look. In the corner of the boutique stood a man. Tall, composed, dressed simply in a black hoodie and jeans. His face showed no emotion. He had been there the whole time, quietly watching everything. But who was he? And why did his voice make the whole room go silent? The man stepped forward slowly. His shoes barely made a sound on the marble floor. Everyone's eyes followed him as he walked closer to the counter. Monica's confident smile began to fade. Her eyes went wide with recognition. "Wait," one of the other women whispered. "That's David Okonkwo." The name hung in the air like thunder. David Okonkwo. The billionaire who owned half of Lagos. The man whose face appeared in business magazines and news headlines. The man everyone whispered about but few had ever seen up close. Monica's face turned pale. "David? What are you doing here?" she asked, forcing a nervous laugh. "I didn't even see you come in." David ignored her question completely. He walked straight to the sales counter and spoke clearly. "I'll take every gown she looked at," he said, pointing toward the door where Blessing had disappeared. "Deliver them to her home." The saleswoman blinked in confusion. "Sir, are you sure?" "Yes," David replied calmly. "Every single one." Monica's voice shook with both confusion and anger. "You're buying for her?" "David, she's nobody." David turned to her slowly. His eyes were calm, but his words carried steel. "No one is a nobody, Monica. Especially not someone who's done nothing wrong." A heavy silence filled the boutique. Monica's perfect smile crumbled for the first time. The other women stood frozen, their mouths slightly open in shock. David handed his card to the manager and walked out without another word. Behind him, whispers exploded like fireworks. The women began talking rapidly, their voices mixing together in disbelief. Outside, Blessing sat on the curb near her small apartment in Surulere. She blinked back tears, hating herself for walking into that store. She hated the laughter, the pity, the shame that still burned in her chest. Then a delivery van stopped right beside her. "Miss Blessing?" the driver called out. She looked up, startled. "Yes." "These are for you," he said, lifting a large golden box from the back of the van. Blessing stood up slowly, confused. "There must be a mistake. I didn't order anything." The driver checked his paper. "No mistake. The address is correct." Someone paid for everything. He placed the box carefully on the ground and drove away, leaving Blessing standing alone in the dusty street. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside were gowns. Beautiful, expensive gowns. Soft silks, delicate lace, colors she had only ever seen in magazines and fashion shows. At the top was a white envelope. She opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a note written in neat, confident handwriting. For the woman who deserves more than laughter. Tears filled Blessing's eyes. She didn't know who had sent it. She only knew that someone, somewhere, had seen her differently. Not as a joke. Not as someone to mock. But as someone worthy. She held one of the gowns against her chest and whispered into the evening air, "Thank you, whoever you are." Not far away, inside a black car with tinted windows, David sat watching. His face showed no emotion, but his heart felt something it hadn't felt in years. He had seen something in Blessing that reminded him what truly mattered. And he knew this was only the beginning. Days passed, but Blessing couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious gift. Every morning, she would open her tiny wardrobe and stare at those beautiful gowns hanging beside her old clothes. They looked so out of place in her small room, like stars that had fallen from the sky. Who would do something so kind? And why for her? She wanted to return them. It felt wrong to keep such expensive things. But the note had no name, no address, no phone number. Just those words written in bold, elegant handwriting. At first she didn't dare touch them. It felt like they belonged to someone else, someone better than her. But one evening, after another long day of cleaning offices in Ikoyi, she couldn't resist anymore. She unfolded a soft blue gown and slipped it over her head. The fabric hugged her shoulders gently, flowing down like water. She looked at herself in the small cracked mirror on her wall. For the first time in a long while, Blessing smiled at her reflection. She looked different. Confident. Graceful. Beautiful. Maybe she wasn't as invisible as she thought. Meanwhile, in a quiet penthouse overlooking the Lagos skyline, David sat by his window. The city lights twinkled below like a sea of stars. But his mind was still on the girl from the boutique. He couldn't explain why she stayed in his thoughts. It wasn't just pity. It was something deeper, something that touched a part of him he thought had died long ago. The way she had carried herself even while being mocked. The quiet strength in her eyes. The dignity she held on to when others tried to strip it away. She reminded him that money couldn't buy everything. Some things like courage and grace came from the heart. Monica, his fiancée, had tried to smooth things over after the incident. "Darling," she had said sweetly, "you embarrassed me in front of everyone. I was only joking with her." But David hadn't laughed. "You were cruel," he said simply. "And that's not something to joke about." Since that day, something between them had changed. He couldn't look at Monica the same way anymore. He couldn't forget what he had seen. And he couldn't forget Blessing. A week later, fate brought them together again. David was leaving his private gym in Lekki when he saw her. Blessing. She was at the public park nearby, wearing old sneakers and jogging slowly. Sweat covered her forehead, but she kept going, one step at a time. She wasn't running to impress anyone. She was running to become stronger. To prove to herself that she could keep going no matter what. He watched from a distance at first, admiring her determination. Then, as she stopped to catch her breath, he walked closer. "Hello," he said softly. Blessing turned, startled. Her eyes went wide. "You? It's you." David smiled faintly. "I was hoping you'd remember me." She hesitated, confused and surprised. "You were at the store. I saw you there." He nodded. "Yes. I'm sorry for what happened to you that day." Her eyes softened a little. "You have nothing to apologize for. You didn't laugh at me." David looked down, then back at her. Maybe not out loud. That made her laugh. A real laugh. Warm and gentle and honest. It was the first time he had heard it, and it did something strange to his heart. It made him feel alive. They stood there in the park, two strangers brought together by kindness and cruelty. And for the first time in years, David felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. But neither of them knew what was coming next. Neither knew that this simple moment would change everything. They began to talk. Not about money or status or designer gowns. They talked about life, about dreams, about how unfair people could be sometimes. Blessing told him she was saving money to study fashion design someday. She spoke shyly, almost as if her dreams were too big to say out loud. As if saying them might make them disappear. David listened quietly, fascinated by every word. He wanted to tell her the truth. That he owned several fashion brands. That he could make her dream come true with just one phone call. But something stopped him. For once in his life he wanted to be seen as just a man. Not a billionaire. Not someone with power. Just David. A person who could sit in a park and talk without expectations. When they finally said goodbye, Blessing smiled at him. "Thank you for being kind," she said. "I hope life gives you back what you give to others." He watched her walk away, her ponytail swaying gently, her spirit unbroken despite everything she had endured. And for the first time in years, David smiled. Not the polite smile of a rich man in control, but a quiet, genuine smile of someone who had found a reason to feel alive again. From that day on, they kept meeting. Every morning at the park. What started as polite greetings turned into small conversations, then long talks over cheap coffee from the corner shop. Blessing discovered that David was easy to talk to. He never acted superior. He never tried to impress her. He just listened. Really listened. And she found herself telling him things she hadn't told anyone. Her childhood dreams. Her mother's wise sayings. Her wish to design gowns for women like her. Women who had been laughed at for not fitting in. David, on the other hand, found peace in her simplicity. Around her, he wasn't the billionaire CEO people feared or flattered. He was just David. A man who could laugh about burnt coffee and share silence without it feeling awkward. One morning, as they sat on a bench watching the sunrise over Lagos, Blessing opened her sketchbook. "Don't laugh," she said shyly. "But these are my designs." He took the book gently, flipping through the pages. The drawings were rough, done with a broken pencil. But they had something money couldn't buy. Heart. Real heart. Each dress seemed to tell a story. Stories of women rising. Women healing. Women daring to shine despite the darkness around them. "These are beautiful," David said softly. "You have real talent." She blushed. "They're just dreams. I can't afford fabric, let alone a fashion course." He looked at her seriously. "Dreams don't start with money, Blessing. They start with courage." She smiled. The kind of smile that reaches the eyes and touches the soul. "Then maybe I'm halfway there." Days turned into weeks. They grew close naturally, like two souls who had known each other longer than time could measure. Sometimes they talked about everything. The smell of rain. The taste of suya from the street vendors. How stars never looked the same twice. Other times silence said enough. But inside David's heart, something was changing. A secret was growing heavier. Each time he looked at her, he felt the weight of the lie he was keeping. He wanted to tell her the truth. That he was David Okonkwo. That his penthouse overlooked the skyline she dreamed of designing for. But he feared what that truth might do. Would she still trust him? Or would she see him as one of those people who had once laughed at her? So he kept it hidden. But secrets, like seeds, always find a way to grow. And when they do, they can either bloom into flowers or thorns. One morning, the poster caught Blessing's eye. It was taped crookedly on the wall of a small coffee shop in Ikeja. Bright letters read, "City Dreams Fashion Contest." A chance for aspiring designers to showcase their talent. Winner receives a scholarship and a brand partnership. She stopped in her tracks, staring at the words. A brand partnership. A scholarship. Her heart raced as she read the details again and again. It felt too big. Too impossible. But still, she tore off one of the contact slips and tucked it carefully into her bag. "It doesn't hurt to dream," she whispered to herself. That evening, as she sat in the park sketching, David joined her as usual. "You look deep in thought," he said. "I saw a contest," she replied softly. "For designers. The prize is like a dream come true. But I don't have a mannequin, fabric, or even a decent sewing machine." David tilted his head. "What if you did?" She laughed sadly. "Then I'd still need luck." "You'd need courage more than luck," he said gently. "Show me your sketches." Blessing hesitated, then handed him her worn sketchbook. He flipped through the pages slowly, his mind racing. Each design was beautiful. Raw. Emotional. Full of story. She didn't just design dresses. She designed feelings. Hope stitched into fabric. Strength woven into silk. That night, after walking her home to Surulere, David sat in his car for a long time. He knew what he wanted to do. It was risky. If she ever found out, she might feel betrayed. But he couldn't sit back while her dreams stayed trapped in that sketchbook. The next day, an anonymous package arrived at Blessing's door. Inside was a brand new sewing machine and a small envelope that read, "Every dream deserves a beginning." Blessing gasped, looking around the empty street. Who kept helping her? Her heart swelled with gratitude and confusion. But she didn't waste time asking questions. She worked through the nights, using old fabric and hand-stitching new pieces until her fingers ached. Each dress carried a piece of her soul. Her pain. Her hope. Her journey. When the day of the contest finally arrived, she carried her designs in a box wrapped with ribbon and trembling hope. At the event hall in Victoria Island, dozens of young designers stood behind glossy tables displaying elegant, professional gowns. Blessing's corner looked plain by comparison. Just a simple setup with her hand-sewn pieces. But when the judges approached, their eyes lingered. Her designs told stories that expensive fabrics couldn't tell. Stories of struggle, dignity, transformation. By the time they reached her last gown, a flowing cream dress embroidered with soft blue thread, the room had gone quiet. The lead judge looked at her. "Did you make this yourself?" Blessing nodded. "Every stitch." He smiled. "Then you've just changed your life." Hours later, as the winners were announced, Blessing stood trembling at the edge of the stage. When her name was called, she froze. The crowd cheered. Lights flashed. She covered her mouth in disbelief. She had won. She actually won. Tears filled her eyes as she stepped forward, clutching her certificate like it was made of gold. Somewhere among the spectators stood a man in a black suit, watching quietly. David didn't go near her. Not yet. He wanted her victory to be completely hers. But Monica was there too, standing beside the sponsor's table. Her expression tightened as she spotted David in the crowd. "David," she whispered, fury burning behind her perfect smile. He ignored her. His eyes were only on Blessing. The girl who had gone from humiliation to triumph without knowing he was the silent wind beneath her wings. But how long could the secret last? And what would happen when Blessing discovered the truth? The invitation felt like a dream. When Blessing received the gold-embossed envelope, she could hardly breathe. It was from the Okonkwo Foundation, inviting her to the annual charity gala for rising designers. Her first major showcase since winning the contest. She held the card to her chest, tears in her eyes. "Mama, if only you could see this," she whispered. 4 days she worked tirelessly on a gown worthy of the moment. A flowing ivory masterpiece stitched with soft silver thread. It wasn't just fabric. It was her story sewn together. Every tear, every humiliation, every spark of hope. When Blessing stepped into the grand ballroom at Eco Hotel, she felt like she had walked into a fairy tale. Chandeliers sparkled like stars. Violins sang softly in the background. Elegant people in glittering gowns moved gracefully across the marble floors. She clutched her small purse tightly, her heart racing. "I made it," she thought. "I really made it." But then she heard the host's voice echo through the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to tonight's sponsor, the one and only Mr. David Okonkwo." Blessing froze. Her fingers went numb. Slowly she turned toward the spotlight. And there he was. The man who had met her at the park. The one who shared coffee and laughter under the rain. He stood tall in a black tuxedo, smiling politely at the crowd. Cameras flashed around him. The banner behind the stage read, Okonkwo Foundation, in shining gold letters. For a moment, the entire world went silent. It couldn't be. David. Her mind spun in circles. The late-night talks. The advice. The encouragement. All those moments that had felt real and simple suddenly felt like pieces of a puzzle she hadn't realized she was in. "He's him," she whispered. Her throat tightened. If he was a billionaire, then how much of her journey had really been hers? The contest. The sewing machine. The scholarship. Had she truly won them, or had he quietly placed them in her hands? Was I ever good enough, she thought? Or was I just his project? As applause rose for David's entrance, Blessing couldn't bring herself to clap. The warmth she once felt when thinking about him turned into something heavy. Doubt. Confusion. Hurt. She looked at him again. His confident smile. The grace in his posture. And suddenly she felt small. The park benches. The jokes about coffee. The quiet encouragements. They all seemed like kindness from a man far above her world. He knew who he was all along, she thought. But he let me believe we were equals. Her eyes stung with tears. She turned away quickly, afraid he might see the disappointment on her face. Across the hall, David was shaking hands when his eyes found her. For a brief second, their gazes locked. Her eyes, the same ones that once smiled at him through the rain, were cold now. Wounded. Confused. He took a step toward her, but she looked away. He froze, realizing too late that the truth he had hidden had cost him something precious. Her trust. Blessing felt someone touch her arm. "Miss Blessing, they're ready for you backstage," a staff member said. She nodded automatically, walking down the hallway with her heart pounding louder than the music. In her mind, memories flashed. His laughter. His quiet encouragement. His words, "Dreams don't start with money. They start with courage." But now those same words sounded hollow. The MC's voice echoed from the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our contest winner, Miss Blessing Adeyemi." Applause erupted. Blessing stepped out beneath the bright lights, her heart aching. She smiled, but her eyes were distant. She spoke softly into the microphone. "Every dress I've ever sewn came from a place of struggle and hope. I wanted women like me to remember that beauty isn't found in price tags, but in persistence." Her voice cracked slightly. She took a breath. But sometimes even persistence feels borrowed. The audience clapped, thinking it was part of her emotional speech. But David heard the weight in her words. He felt every syllable like a blow to his heart. After the presentation, Blessing stepped off the stage, blinking rapidly to keep her tears from falling. People congratulated her, shook her hand, praised her talent. But their words floated past like echoes from another world. As she walked toward the exit, a familiar voice stopped her cold. "Well, if it isn't the contest princess," Monica said, her tone dripping with poison. She was radiant in crimson silk, her smile sharp as glass. "Good evening, Miss Monica," Blessing said quietly. "Oh, don't be so formal, darling. You really think a billionaire like David Okonkwo just wandered into your world by chance?" Monica leaned closer, her voice lowering. "He helped you because you looked pitiful. You're just another one of his charity projects." The words hit like knives. Blessing's throat tightened. "That's not true," she whispered. Monica chuckled, enjoying every second. "Of course it's true. And when he's done fixing you, he'll move on to the next broken thing. Oh, and by the way," she held up her hand, flashing an enormous diamond ring, "he's my fiancé." Blessing staggered back. "Your fiancé?" The world spun around her. David. Engaged. Her chest felt like it was collapsing. She turned and saw him pushing through the crowd, calling her name. "Blessing. Wait." But she couldn't stay. Not there. Not with the lights, the stairs, the shame pressing down on her like a heavy weight. "All this time I thought I won," she said, tears slipping down her face. "I thought someone finally believed in me. But it was you all along. You built the stairs and watched me climb them like a fool." "Blessing, please," David said softly. "It wasn't like that." But she turned and ran, her tears falling faster than she could breathe. The crowd parted as she fled the ballroom, leaving whispers, glitter, and heartbreak behind. That night, she sat alone in her small room in Surulere, still wearing the gown she had made by hand. The certificate lay crumpled beside her. "Did I really win?" she whispered into the darkness. "Or was I just part of his kindness?" Outside her window, the city lights of Lagos twinkled like stars. But inside her heart, everything felt dark. For days, Blessing avoided calls, messages, and the world itself. Her phone buzzed constantly. Reporters, designers, even David. But she couldn't bring herself to answer. Every headline burned her eyes. "Mystery unfolds at the Okonkwo Gala. Who really is Blessing Adeyemi?" She threw the phone aside, clutching her knees as tears filled her eyes. Her heart still ached for David. But the wound of betrayal cut deeper than she wanted to admit. Was her success real? Or had it all been built on a foundation of his influence? The sewing machine sat untouched in the corner. The same one that had once felt like a miracle. Now it looked like a reminder of everything she'd lost. Her pride, her trust, her dream. Then one morning she sat before it again. Her fingers trembled as she touched the fabric. "No more pity," she said, her voice breaking. "No more borrowed dreams." She took a deep breath and began to sew. Slowly, painfully. Each stitch carried her anger, her hope, her determination to rise again on her own terms. Days turned into nights. The rhythm of the needle became her heartbeat again. And with every piece she finished, she began to heal. Weeks later, she received an invitation. Not from a sponsor. Not from a foundation. But from a local art center in Yaba. They had seen her designs online and wanted to feature her work in a small independent showcase. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers. When the day arrived, she stood in a modest hall filled with handmade dresses and warm smiles. No chandeliers. No glitter. Just people who came because they believed in the work, not the name behind it. And then she saw him. David stood at the back, wearing no tuxedo this time. Just a plain shirt. No camisas. No entourage. When their eyes met, she froze. He walked toward her slowly, giving her time to walk away. But she didn't. "Blessing," he said softly. "I didn't come to interrupt. I just wanted to see you win for real this time." Her throat tightened. Why didn't you tell me who you were? He sighed. Because every time I tried, I saw the way you looked at me. Not at my money. Not my name. Just me. And I was selfish. I wanted that a little longer. Do you have any idea what it felt like? She asked. Realizing I might have been nothing more than your charity? He stepped closer. You were never my charity. You were my reminder that money can't make something beautiful. But love and courage can. Silence hung between them. Then Blessing looked around at the dresses she'd made with her own hands. I built this one myself, she said quietly. No sponsors. No help. He smiled, pride in his eyes. I know. That's why it's perfect. She looked at him, studying his face. You hurt me, David. I know, he said. And I'm sorry. I don't know if I can ever forget what happened, she said slowly. But I think I can forgive it. A faint smile touched his lips. That's more than I deserve. You're right, she said with quiet strength. But maybe that's how healing starts. One honest moment at a time. He looked around at her work again. You did this without me. You proved everyone wrong. Her lips curved faintly. Maybe proving you wrong was the easy part. They both laughed softly. Genuinely. And for the first time in months, the space between them didn't feel broken. 1 year later, the city of Lagos no longer whispered about Blessing Adeyemi. It celebrated her. Her fashion label, Radiance, had become a symbol of hope. Her designs appeared in magazines, on runways, and in the lives of everyday women who saw themselves in her story. At her new boutique's grand opening in Lekki, the air buzzed with joy. Cameras flashed. Journalists chatted. And elegant music floated through the space. But Blessing only saw one person in the crowd. David. When the crowd thinned, he walked up to her quietly. You've built something incredible, he said. She smiled. We've both come a long way. David reached into his pocket and brought out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. He opened it to reveal a simple ring. A thin band of gold shaped like a delicate thread, holding a single diamond. Blessing Adeyemi, he said, his voice steady. You changed my life in ways I'll never be able to explain. Will you marry me? Tears filled her eyes. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, applause erupted. Blessing laughed through her tears, holding his hand tightly. Above them, the boutique sign shimmered, Radiance by Blessing Adeyemi. And beneath it, she finally felt what she had been searching for all along. Not validation. Not approval. But peace. Love had found her again. And this time it came dressed in truth. We've come to the end of today's story. I hope it touched your heart. Thanks for watching and staying with us till the end. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. See you in the next one. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from?